Hi there, welcome to the first episode of Season 2 of My First Quilt. I'm Sarah, and today we're going to discuss reading quilt patterns. If you are like me, you probably have stacks of quilting magazines in various places around your home. And it's so much fun to collect the magazines. I get so much inspiration by looking at them, but different magazines have a different way of doing things. So I want to just talk a little bit about how you can read the patterns in your magazines and what some of the differences are that you're going to find. So right here I've got an issue of Quilter's newsletter. It was Best Tradition with a Twist Quilt, and this is actually a quilt that I made for the issue that I've got behind me called Broken Plates. And when you look at the pattern and open up the magazine, you'll see that materials and cutting are all located in the same box on the same page of the magazine. So it tells me that for each of the different fabrics, like the aqua tone on tone, I need 2 5/8 yards, and that I need to cut 25 A pieces and 5 C pieces. So what are the A and the C pieces? If I look over here, there are also rotary cutting instructions, and it tells me that for piece A, I need to cut a 19 3/4 inch square, and then I'm going to cut diagonally, corner to corner, 2 times to create 4 triangles. Those get sewn together to create the blocks. And then I also have to cut 10 1/8 inches squares, which I will then cut diagonally 1 time. So on this block, it's telling me to cut them twice, and on this one, it's telling me just to cut them once. And those aqua pieces are going to be the backgrounds for the blocks. And then it tells me for the red tone on tone, I need 1/2 yard, and gives me my border measurements that I'll cut for it, and same with the black dot. So I can kind of follow along there, and sometimes if I'm working off the bolts of fabric and I know that I need to cut, instead of just getting the yardage, I may just start by cutting 19 3/4 inch squares and then subcutting them instead of going with just the full yardage that it tells me. Sometimes I work a little bit faster that way because I've got a quilt shop and I can just cut them right off the bolts at my shop. So that's how one magazine handles their instructions. Now another thing that's interesting about this particular magazine, if we look at the next page, going in circles, you have several different circular templates that you need, and it tells you in the instructions here, you've got materials and cutting. Again, it gives you the measurements that you need. It tells you what the sizes of your pieces are, but inside the instructions, in the assembly instructions, it tells you that you need to get the full-size applique patterns on the pull-out pattern sheet. Now this is why it's really important that when you read a quilt pattern, whether it's in a magazine or in a pattern packet, you read through those instructions first because you get some information that you need as you're reading the directions before you begin completing the quilt. So then when we look to the pull-out pattern page here, we can see that we've got several different patches. You literally take this right out of the magazine, tear it right out, and you can trace off as many of the different shapes as your instructions tell you to do. So you've always got your little pull-out pattern piece in there, and they can be really handy. A lot of times I'll photocopy those and just save the originals maybe with the magazine or somewhere safe so that if I want to use it again, I can. Now if you look at this issue here, this is all about different quilt blocks. It's the best blocks from different Quilter's newsletter magazine editors. And in these, you don't get instructions on how much yardage to purchase. It's just giving you cutting instructions. And the other thing that it's not going to do, some of these are paper piecing patterns, and it doesn't give you seam allowances. So if you're tracing a paper piecing pattern, you've got to add your 1/4 inch seam allowances. But like I said before, when I look at this grandmother's favorite block, it tells me here how I piece it, what the letters are that create the different elements of the block, what sizes to cut those. But it doesn't give me any yardage requirements because it's up to you. Are you going to make 10 of these blocks, or are you going to make 5? Are you making just one and combining it with other blocks within the magazine? That's kind of a fun little project to do with a magazine like this. With the best blocks, create a sampler quilt. Get out some of your scrap fabrics where you don't need a ton of yardage because you're not making a lot of different blocks. You can just get out your scraps and make one block at a time. It's a fun little way to create a beautiful sampler quilt. So as you're looking through your magazines, you might find that they show you your instructions in a different way. So in this particular magazine here, I have a planning section that tells me how to plan out my quilt. And then I have a shopping list, just like a grocery list for going to the grocery store, except this is your quilt shop list. And it tells me that for the red batiks in the blocks, I need 1 1/4 yards. So I could just take this little list with me to my quilt shop and pick out the fabrics that I need. And then below that, it tells me to cut in the order listed If it tells you to cut in the order listed, it's a good idea to go in the order listed. Don't go out of the order. Usually there is a reason why they tell you to do it that way. And then it just, like I said, shows you exactly here what sizes to cut, and then you've got your instructions on how to put it together. And it's got nice little pictures giving you a color visual graphic as to how each of the blocks should look as you put them together. And then it also gives you a little bit of layout assistance for when you're sewing the blocks of the quilt together to complete the entire thing. So some really good information in there. So when you're looking at different quilt magazines that are your favorites, maybe you've got a subscription or you purchase them from your local shop, just read through the instructions and know that they may not all give you the instructions in the same way. There are lots of different magazine companies, lots of different publishers, and everybody has a little bit different way of doing things. So take a little bit of time, read through your pattern before you head to the store to go shopping or before you head into your stash to look for the fabrics. Make sure you've got a good grasp of how that quilt's going to go together and what you need for it, and you'll start off with success in creating a beautiful quilt. Thanks for watching. This episode of My First Quilt has been brought to you by Baby Lock, for the love of sewing, OmniGrid, providing quilters with specialty rulers and accessories for over 30 years. Furniture provided by Koala, fine sewing furniture custom built for you.